ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all sexualities and identities, and welcome back to another Doctor Who review. And today's Doctor Who review is, of course, Lux. Now, before we get into this, spoilers, you have been warned. So without further ado, let's get right into the story. Just a regular night at the cinema. A cinema owner is putting on a movie. At first, they're all watching about the atom bomb. But suddenly, during the break, he decides to put on a tape called Mr. Ring-a-Ding. And Mr. Ring-a-Ding, at first, for the fair part, is just a cartoon. But is a cartoon only a cartoon? Especially when moonlight is involved. Mr. Ring-a-Ding begins to play on the screen, and all of the people in the cinema enjoy him at first. But then, as the moonlight hits the screen and he becomes real, people begin to judge him in the cinema, and they start calling him things. And he doesn't quite like it, and so he says, "Don't make me laugh." And when he says this, they all begin to turn and realize he's no longer just a cartoon, that he is in fact alive. And so Mr. Ring-a-Ding traps all 15 of the people in the cinema into the tapes. Don't make me laugh. And so, once he does that, they're all trapped. And this is where the Doctor comes in. The Doctor and Belinda arrive in the 1950s. The cinema has been locked, and so the Doctor loves a good mystery. But first they go into the diner and begin to ask the guy in the diner about the missing people and the disappearances. The guy in the diner mentions the fact that the woman in the corner has lost her son, and so she is willing to talk to anyone if it just means that she can get her son back. The Doctor promises he'll get her son back, but he still doesn't know what lays ahead, and so he goes to investigate the cinema, and what he finds is way beyond what he would have thought. Doctor and Belinda enter the cinema, and so Mr. Ring-a-Ding appears, and the Doctor begins to ask how a cartoon can come to life. Mr. Ring-a-Ding points out the fact that he was brought to life by the moon. At first the Doctor buys this, but then he begins to ask Mr. Ring-a-Ding questions about all the people who went missing, and Mr. Ring-a-Ding just laughs. Ha 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 ha. It turns out that Mr. Ring-a-Ding has put all the lost people onto tape, immortalizing them into film. The caretaker / ex-projectionist tries to save the Doctor and Belinda by putting on Mr. Ring-a-Ding's tape, knowing full well that whilst it's on, Mr. Ring-a-Ding can't help but sing along to the tune. Then he explains to the Doctor and Belinda that the only reason he hasn't tried to run away from Mr. Ring-a-Ding is because Mr. Ring-a-Ding brought back his wife by using the use of footage. The Ring-a-Ding eventually catches up after sloping his way through the cinema to get to the room where the projection is, and so he uses the projection against the Doctor and Belinda and turns them both into cartoons. Yes, and by trapping them in there, he knows they have to find their own way out. The Doctor soon realizes the only way to do it is to keep breaking the fourth wall. At first, he starts pulling down the reel, but by doing this he realizes that it doesn't properly work, and then they eventually manage to go through a TV, even though they're still in the film. Are then introduced to some very, very enthusiastic Doctor Who fans. But it turns out none of us exist! Huh? Yes, apparently, by the synopsis of this, all Doctor Who fans are a figment of an imagination. We don't exist. We're just some ploy in Lux's eternal God plan, constructed to watch Doctor Who endlessly and criticize every single episode just for the sake of it. So you out there, all of you watching this review right now, we're all part of a God Pantheon's plot. Who would know? The Ring-a-Ding then tries to take the light from the Doctor after the Doctor and Belinda escape, finding out that the Doctor's regeneration is some form of light energy. Mr. Ring-a-Ding uses some film tapes to tie the Doctor up onto a wall and basically start draining him of his regeneration energy. In doing this, he becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. Belinda convinces the guy who's the caretaker slash projector operator to give her a bunch of matches. But instead of her getting the matches, he decides to go and burn the can room himself with a bunch of matches. But this only half stops Mr. Ring-a-Ding. And so Mr. Ring-a-Ding finally gets more and more power as he feels the light from the outside touch his skin. Once the light of creation touches him and it starts to make him grow further and further, Mr. Ring-a-Ding eventually becomes part of the stars themselves. And so, in doing so, he disappears into complete starlight and becomes one with the universe. The Doctor and Belinda open the door to all the people who went missing as they finally have reappeared back in the cinema. A young boy is reunited with his mother, and so their job here is done. As they go to get back inside of the box, there's a very sneaky cameo from Mrs. Flood, all going on about a one night only show to do with the disappearance of the police box, but also mentioning something about May, which kind of leads us into the final of this series, making us believe that maybe, just maybe, Mrs. Flood has more and more plans we don't yet know about. So overall, what were my thoughts on Lux? Well, I like the way that racism was handled in this episode. I also like the way that Mr. Ring-a-Ding, was handled in this episode. I like the idea that the Pantheon can control and can come in many different forms. And especially, I like the mystery behind the disappearances. A big up in this episode has got to be the breaking of the fourth wall, though, with the fandom being acknowledged in this episode. I love the Telos reference on the t-shirt. I love the Meep t-shirt. Where can I get one? And I love the scarf, and I just loved the way that their favourite episode that they were going to bring up was Blink. Not the goblins, not the fact that the Doctor stood on a landmine, but Blink. So, in total, compared to last week's episode, I've got to say that Lux is a massive, massive improvement. The story is very fluid. The idea of this projectionist being manipulated by a cartoon just because the cartoon purely has the power of a god is magnificent. And for that reason, I give Lux a solid 10 out of 10. Thank you for watching. We will see you in another Doctor Who review. Until then, goodbye, stay beautiful, and Allons-y.